The Neil Diamond Musical, A Beautiful Noise, the uplifting true story, featuring all the songs you love from his Grammy Award-winning career. October 21st through 26th at Des Moines Civic Center. On sale at dmpa.org.
I'm Chris Williams from Cyclone Fanatic and a proud Iowa State graduate from the class of 2007. No one shows up like Iowa State fans. And Cyclones support Cyclones on and off the field. Your gift can provide scholarships to students, fund groundbreaking research. We could even drum up opportunities for the marching band. Visit MoveWhatMatters.com to learn how you can make an impact today.
Whoa! Listen to that music. The beat reporters are ready to report with that music. Thanks to Aiden Wyatt, who is producing behind the scenes. I am Jake Brend, joined by Ben Hutchens of the Quad City Times and Rob Gray of Cyclone Fanatic in the Cedar Rapids Gazette. Gentlemen, welcome to week 3 of the Beat Reporters. How we doing?
Doing good.
Just fine. Do you think this would be the official aux of the Cyclone helmet car? That song right there? What would they be bumping in there?
That's a great question. I was trying to think of what type of movie this music would be in. Like a racing movie?
A figure skating / spy movie in 1989. How about that?
Sounds awful.
Oh, but the spy element. You see, you get the suspense.
Yeah. Well, I can guarantee you this is not the music that Jeff Kelderman is blasting at his tailgate in the RV Village after the game. He's playing Aaron Lewis and everything like that. He's friends with Big and Rich. I mean, I'm telling you, this guy is just fascinating. I'd never really talked to him for more than 10 minutes before Saturday, and in the RV Village, I probably chatted with him for a solid 2 hours, and he does great work down at Kelderman Manufacturing in Oskaloosa, from anything handyman needs, any signage manufacturing. But he also does some content on the side at Kelderman Manufacturing on YouTube. His YouTube channel is pretty incredible. If you just want to look into Jeff Kelderman, he just put out like a 40-minute video of him at the Sturgis motorcycle show up in South Dakota. It's very Kelderman. So go and check that out. And then whenever you need your manufacturing needs, Kelderman is your guy. We've got 5 topics per usual for you today. And we'll talk a little bit about the Arkansas State game, how it compares to the 2023 Ohio game as far as a trap game. John Heacock has pointed out a stat that's alarming about not getting stops after scores. Iowa State has had back-to-back years with Ivy League players making an impact as transfers. We'll talk about the 98-degree heat and fatigue that could come with that, and then also a sophomore connection between 2 Iowa State players on opposite sides of the ball. But let's start with the obvious comparisons and differences to the 2023 Ohio game. Rob, I know you were on the beat during that. Ben, I'm sure you've heard more than enough about this game. What stands out to you when that Ohio game is brought up compared to this game?
Yeah, I think the Ohio game is brought up as a rallying cry. I mean, Coach Campbell said it repeatedly that he learned what kind of toughness Rocco Becht had in that game when he was puking his guts out, and he thought, I better go get J.J. Cole for the second half, and Rocco said, no, Coach, I'm playing. And obviously, still a 10-7 loss, still a gut punch of a game to go with puking those said guts out for Rocco. But, they went on to win 7 regular season games. Obviously, had the tough loss to Memphis, host Memphis in the Liberty Bowl. But it was a point in the season. You had the whole thing with that fan that harassed or
hot seat Campbell. You're on the hot seat, Campbell.
And just a bizarre situation. But again, that was not, Iowa State was not a 20.5, 21-point favorite in that game.
Yes.
Iowa State was as I recall it, it was almost a pick'em game on paper. I can't remember, but it certainly wasn't anywhere approaching a 3-touchdown advantage per Vegas. So I think the similarities are, hey, it was the last time you went on the road against a non-power 4, and you got beat, and it shocked the fan base. Certainly, it was. The reaction was, I think, a little bit over the top, but I think it was just one of those, just jarring. The fact that you couldn't score, you couldn't get enough. Defense holds them to 10, and you can't find a way to win. You had the weird field goal, too, that it looked like maybe it was good, and then ruled it was no. Just an all-around just awful day for Iowa State, but spurred something else, though, and I think they look back on now as a really awful thing in the moment, but a blessing in disguise. This one, you're expected to roll. I mean, Arkansas State can't stop anybody, and they've got the fewest amount of returners, I think, in the FBS level in terms of returning players. A couple stars in Jalen Rayner at quarterback, and the receiver Corey Rucker, and some other skill guys that have stepped up. But just up front, I mean, this is a team that Iowa State should run up and down the field on, and that's so the similarities is they could still find themselves in one of those situations where the fans are like, oh my God, how is this a game? But I think the big difference is that Iowa State is fully expected to still roll in this game despite the stumbling blocks, the hurdles, the heat, the athleticism, the Sun Belt team, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, guys, as you know, I joined the Iowa State beat almost a year ago today. And the funny part is I feel like I was there at this Ohio game because I've heard so much about it from Matt Campbell, who seemingly finds every way to reference this Ohio game as a true turning point. Rocco Beck throwing up and kind of what they learned there. You got to learn who you can lose with before you can win with. Like, I've heard so much about this Ohio game. I can't even imagine how often it's getting referred to in those meeting rooms and coaches and with locker rooms and stuff this week as Iowa State tries to kind of pound the final nail down from this 4-game start. And kind of my perspective on it that you guys might enjoy is my first time ever in the Jack Trice Stadium press box was actually the week after this Ohio game when Oklahoma State University came up to Iowa and played. And coming off of that Ohio game, man, like Rocco Becht was an inexperienced player. We didn't know much about these, at the time, kind of unproven receivers in Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll. You might have heard of him. And I think coming away from that game, I was like, wow, Iowa State has some dang good receivers. This quarterback has a lot of moxie. And it's kind of funny to think, Iowa State won that game, and those two games combined kind of kickstarted so much of what we've seen last year and this year.
Yeah, it's a little off topic, but to reference that Oklahoma State game, I just remember the week after the Ohio game, the entire discourse, and I was a part of it, was you cannot stop, or you cannot keep pounding your head into a brick wall and continue to do it, because Iowa State was just running it up the middle, they had 17 rushing yards that game, something horrible.
Very low.
It was horrible. And Williams is out here parading like, I'm telling you guys, air raid, 5 out, 5. And then Iowa State comes out, and I think they put up, 38 points or something. And the football team put up a graphic. And it was like Rocco and Knoll and Daniel Jackson and Nate Shieldhouse with airplanes calling it the air raid. That is crazy to look back on. And you're right, Rob. The reason there are similarities is because it's just the last time that Iowa State went on the road to a group of 5 team. This current team has a starting quarterback that played in that game, has a right tackle that started in that game. Jeremiah Cooper played in that game. There's Caleb Bacon. There's plenty of guys who remember what the sting of losing that game was like. And I'm sure what followed on that bus ride home, or that plane ride home, the practice on Monday. And again, it is a turning point. And I think that's where the similarities end. What I think the danger is just like, you got to be up, you got to be awake for it. And you got to go play a decent game to win.
Yeah, and I think that's why Campbell brought in, whenever he broaches the ego topic, He brought that in. Are you going to be able to, not fall into the trap of being self-satisfied or thinking like, because look, Iowa State it's outstanding that they have a 3-0 start. But again, the margins are still slim. All the things he talks about are true. And they've got to have that mentality always. And I think he's really making sure he reinstates that, make sure it's in its proper form heading into this game, because you do have again an Arkansas State team that obviously just killed 52-7 last season. He still went on to win a bowl game. And the Sun Belt is not an easy conference. There's a lot of skilled players in that league. And Butch Jones, his pedigree speaks for itself as a head coach. So, when you got a quarterback as good as Rainer is, the Cyclones made him play perhaps the worst game of his career last season. But I think that's one of the reasons, Campbell said he's one of the best quarterbacks maybe they'll face in terms of he didn't say in terms of a full dual threat, but I think that's kind of what he meant. I think he did. They put a lot of attention on him, and that's one reason he completed, 6 passes for a middling amount of yards and all of that. So, I mean, you can't, at Iowa State, as Campbell says all the time, too, you can't ever think that you've arrived, because when you do, that's when you do get knocked off. And think about the one thing about that Ohio game that I didn't really fully think back to. I think the reason the fan base reaction was what it was is look at what happened the previous season.
Exactly.
You could not win a single close game. You go on the road against a MAC team you ought to be able to beat. And as you said, Jake, you pound your head against the wall. You don't get creative. And you lose that game by 3 points, in which you should have won it at least by 10. You know what I mean? So the psychic debris from that, all the one-score losses the season before, I think seeped into that. And people are thinking, oh, no, here we go again. Instead, went the other way. And then, of course, an historic season last season.
So I thought you were going the other way, which is in 2023 you lose to Ohio, but the year before that, Iowa State beat Ohio 43-10 at home. So there is a precedent of don't let your ego get in the way. Just because you won this game at Jack Trice Stadium by 30 points last year, and in this case 45 points, you've seen that an Iowa State team can lose this game. And that's, I'd imagine that messaging is being conveyed right now in the locker room.
That's where my mind went, Jake. I think there's so much truth to that. One of the hardest things to do in competition, and you might have some idea of this with your tennis background, is to go out there and smoke a team in a first set or a first game, and then come back with that. Oh,
yeah, all the time. Just dominated everybody. No, I'm kidding.
Well, when you did stumble into the occasional first set domination, coming back with that same energy is psychologically so hard. You can tell yourself you will, but there's something about the confidence that you build in that first big win that I just think everybody has a tendency to take it a little less seriously the next time around. But I do think that the biggest difference is the consistency with Iowa State. We talked about all those guys who played in that game and already know. In that Ohio game in 23, all of the new things that Iowa State was having to figure out. So I don't think that the Cyclones are going to fall, to another trap game. They've so far, dominated their 3 trap games in Ireland, coming back against South Dakota, and I think they'll be coached up again this time.
Could not agree more, Ben.
Fully agree.
So it's probably makes most sense right now to shift into the heat/fatigue talk. And I'm not talking one of the greatest movies of all time, Heat, with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, but the forecast in Jonesboro is, last I looked, projected to be a high of 98, which I think we all know this as Iowans. You can get somewhat used to the extreme heat and you can run outside in the extreme heat, but once it goes away for a couple weeks and comes back, you're not used to it. And I guess if I do have any sort of concern for Iowa State, it's been a pretty temperate September/end of August. They probably haven't had a 90-degree or a 95-degree practice since before Dublin. Mm-hmm. I'm just interested to see how that affects the game, or if it washes it out because Arkansas State doesn't have any depth.
Yeah, well, that's why I asked Coach Campbell about that a little bit, because when the question you had asked after the 3-0 start, which led to his saying, I'm a little bit concerned about what's coming, seemed to hint at some fatigue. We saw Dom Orange come to the sidelines after one of those 2 long Iowa drives, looking pretty gassed, and he seemed to be kind of hinting at that we can't let, we can't, as mentally tough as we've been so far to fight through. You got 2 one-score wins. You can't let your physical stuff slide, and I, which is why I followed up. Also, is there can be residual effects. You can think like jet lag is not necessarily an immediate thing. It takes some toll on your body and your brain, and which might not show up for a couple of weeks, and it might not show up in a way that's like, whoa, I'm floored. It shows up in small ways. We all know with Iowa State, everything small is important, and so I thought it was interesting how he talked about it. He did reference, I think, some ungodly temperature they did practice in before Dublin and got through it just fine. But again, you got the bumps and bruises of 3 physical college football games under your belt, and I'll tell you what, as bad as Iowa humidity is, once you start to get more towards southern humidity, granted you're just basically on the edge of Tennessee and Jonesboro and all that just hits different. So I think there's a reason for concern there. I think, though, the fact that they've invested so much in their nutrition staff and all the recovery things and of course the strength part of it, I think they'll have a really good plan for that, to hydration and everything else. But again, that's a wild card. You can't. And again, what if you have tent gate like you did at Baylor a few years ago? Oh gosh, they make you take down your tents and
Campbell's not letting that happen again. I can. With how much of a psychopath he is with the little details. Ben, are you aware of tent gate?
I am anxious to hear what tent gate is.
Back in 2019, Rob will honestly probably tell this story better, but correct me if I make any slip-ups. Iowa State was playing in Waco, and it was like 100 degrees. The feels like temp was probably 110 down on the field.
Or 115, yeah.
And Iowa State brought their own tents for the sideline because the sun was beating right down on them. And Baylor made them take it down because they didn't pre-approve them. So Iowa State played this game, lost it to a bad Baylor team. They lost it not because of the tents, but they didn't have any shade on the sidelines.
Yeah, and Baylor, it was the way it was set up too. Baylor's sideline was completely shaded.
Of course.
They told them basically retroactively that, you needed a pre-approved ring in your own tents. So you got to take those down. So, that seemed a little Bush League at the time, but perhaps letter of the law, that the Cyclones weren't in violation of that. But a long roundabout way of saying it is, I know they'll have a good plan for it, and I think they won't be caught off guard by anything in terms of dealing with the heat.
Well, it is a valid concern, and I don't have any evidence to support this, but last week, where we maybe noticed some of this fatigue setting in, we noticed a lot more of these mental mistakes and these penalties. Iowa State, through the first 2 games and all of last season, was so good at avoiding penalties. Top 5 team in the nation in that respect, and I thought we saw a little bit more of that creep up in the Cyhawk game, whether that is through fatigue or just a bigger atmosphere, or some of those things are bound to happen throughout the course of a season. But that's going to be something I'm going to be potentially watching for as an area for, hey, can you keep your mind focused? Can you keep your body, in the right places? And all of those things I think factor in.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely.
And I think if Iowa State was going to play Arkansas, this would be a much bigger concern because you're playing another Power 4 program who is probably more used to that heat than you. But playing Arkansas State, there is a chance with them coming off of a beatdown against Arkansas that the fatigue could even hurt them more than Iowa State. Even though they live in it and they're probably more used to it, it'll probably hurt them not having a Zamir Hawk as a second string. Like the 2 deeps could have a massive advantage and massive edge over Arkansas State when it comes to, I guess, what they're coming in to play against.
Absolutely. That's the flip side of what you guys were talking about with and Ben, you put it really succinctly and very well, that it's hard not to relax a little bit when you crush a team. And okay, next time you're like, oh, what kind of fight are they going to put up? Conversely, these guys are going to say, we were better than that. We were better than that. That was not representative of who we are. So they're going to come out, and if they can keep it close early, they'll have that juice. If they don't, and if Iowa State's able to roll offensively, get up 2 scores immediately, that's where I think that fatigue factor for them could really settle in and be like, oh no, here we go again. We came out all jacked up, and they flattened us, and what are we going to do? So that's another dynamic. I think that, the potential for overconfidence on one side and that potential for feeling of revenge on the other side. Well, if that goes away, that could very well factor. And even though they're used to that heat week in, week out, it could really start to drain them as well. Yeah.
Well, if I had to make a bet, I would bet that Iowa State scores a touchdown the first time they have the ball. I'd bet they score a lot of touchdowns. But an alarming stat that was pointed out by none other than John Heacock yesterday, kind of unprovoked, was that Iowa State has really, really struggled to stop opponents after they score a touchdown themselves. In fact, they've scored 4 touchdowns against Power 4 opponents, K-State and Iowa. They have allowed a touchdown on the ensuing drive all 4 times. Here's John Heacock talking about that, and then Ben and Rob, I'll get your opinions after that.
We're searching it out. We're working really hard at it. Jace, our analytics director, brought it up again, to the team yesterday, a little bit of just, man, we have to find ways to go out there with a mindset. And again, we've got to sort it out as coaches. And, it's got to be something we pay attention to, because it's something that really can allow your team to get the ball back for our offense. And it's not that we're not trying, that's not it. We're playing good folks too. And they're trying to score after we score. So it's competition and all that, but it's something to pay attention to, and we're certainly diving into it.
Gentlemen, thoughts on this stat? Fluke? Is there substance to it? Somewhere in between?
I have a solution. The solution that nobody talking about, guys, is you got to get TJ Otzelberger to start leading a kill chant, I think.
I thought you were going to say just stop scoring touchdowns.
Well, I guess
also
that's
a solution.
True. Just let Conradi kick enough field goals. But I thought about, that chant in basketball that the student section always leads to get stops in a row and the psychological advantage that brings. There's a reason basketball coaches across the nation place so much emphasis on doing that, because those are big turning points in the game. And I don't know, it is kind of mystifying to me why Iowa State has given up a touchdown after scoring a touchdown on all 5 of its scores against Power 5 opponents. Like, I can't tell you why. Jace in the analytics department at Cyclone Football could probably do a lot better job of that than me. But I don't know. It is confounding.
Yeah, I was going to say it wasn't completely unprovoked, Jake, because I did ask like a general question, like, what have you liked? What have you not liked? And he immediately went into that. That's vintage Heacock, right? He'll talk about their attitude and effort being great all day long, but then he will very frankly and brutally put a flaw in the crosshairs and say, hey, this is not good enough, right? Even, you look at how good that defense has been since year 1 under Campbell. And of course, Heacock's the architect of that, the guru, and he will pick it all apart, including himself. So I think there's definitely a lot of substance to it. I am with Heacock. I can't put a figure on why it's happening, because again, it's not like it's a snowball effect, right? Iowa had, yes, they had really good, that 9-minute drive to start the third quarter after they had the nice 4+ minute touchdown drive to end the first half. But other than that, they couldn't do anything. And, K-State kind of similar to, it was always like one of what was a 9-second-yard touchdown drive right if Iowa State goes up 2 scores. So
yep.
that is legitimately concerning. And I applaud Coach Heacock for really pointing it out and saying, "Hey, we're doing a deep dive to figure out why," because that doesn't happen half the time it occurred. These are comfortable wins rather than one-score wins against Kansas State and Iowa. So, if I were to guess, I since they just scored, do they, dial back pressure a little bit more? Do they, are they a little bit softer in coverage? Because look, what Heacock always wants to do is force that team to make a mistake before his defense does, and he's been masterful at it. That's my only thought that could cause it. I mean, it could be a fluke, but there's definitely substance to it for sure.
I also think it's probably desperation on the other team.
Yeah.
Like being K-State took 2 deep shots and they both paid off of Iowa State miscommunications. Iowa finally started to move Gronowski out of the pocket and let him be an athlete. So there's probably a little bit of that and a little bit of substance and a little bit of fluke, just in the sense of like 2 defensive breakdowns. But I feel like this hasn't been a problem for the majority of the Heacock era. I feel like usually when the defense gets a shot to go end the game or go and end the game, they're able to do it. So I guess we'll see if it evens out over the year, or if it is a real alarming trend that carries on into October.
Yeah. I think that's a good observation, Jake. I did think back to Avery Johnson taking those deep shots, with K-State's back against the wall, and Iowa in kind of a different back against the wall situation, getting back to just running the ball. And that's when Iowa went on its 16-play, 77-yard drive. They got back to their bread and butter. So I do think there is a little bit of desperation, but also in terms of, will we be talking about this in week 8, week 9? Probably not, because over the course of a season, I expect it to even out.
Yeah, and in fairness, I mean, Iowa had, about a minute left, and the defense did bow up with the McDonough's 2 sacks and all of that. They didn't even have a chance there. And I mean, Kansas State certainly felt like they had opportunities too, and they stopped them when they had to. But agree that's a blend, and totally agree also, Jake, you're right. That's when you saw those offenses change up what they were doing. And that's always more difficult. You prepare for certain things. You're going to guess here's what they're going to do. They get you on your heels, especially on those quick strike plays like Kansas State had. That can help explain it rather than just unfortunate timing, I guess, given that you just scored and had the momentum.
Well, and it's big heading into this week because, like we already talked about, if you can go and score, get a stop, get the ball back, score again, the game's probably over. Like I don't see a world where Arkansas State is coming back from a 10 or a 14-point deficit in this game. So if you can score, go and get a quick 3 and out, a turnover, the game should not be over. I don't want to dismiss a Division I football team, but you should be in a really, really, really good position to go win the game comfortably at that point.
Especially with the way Arkansas's offense is built around a mobile quarterback who hasn't done it as much this year, but we saw in Iowa State last year that he's much more comfortable running the ball. So I don't think they're built to come from behind.
Yes, 100%.
He was like 5 for 16 passing last game in Jack Trice.
Career low yardage, I believe, too. I think the one caveat, I mean, they do have playmakers. I mean, the Corey Rucker guy at receiver was a 1,000-yard guy for them last season. I don't think he played in this game last season for whatever reason. One of the only games he missed, but obviously put up 1,000 yards. But this Chauncey Cobb guy is really interesting to me. 5'6", $160 plus, had a 98-yard kickoff return against Arkansas. He's leading them in receiving right now. And you just wonder, I mean, yes, we've seen a lot of great plays from the younger safeties, but Arkansas State dials up some things to maybe see if they can take advantage of what Kansas State did. That's the way I could see them hanging in this game, to get some big plays, force Iowa State to bite on some, chicanery. And but I agree with you guys wholeheartedly. I don't see, barring turnovers by Iowa State's offense, how Arkansas State's defense, based on what we've seen so far, can slow down the Cyclones at all.
Well, and listen, Rob, This is Arkansas State's first home game against a Power 5 opponent in 10 years. Since 2015, they hosted Missouri. Man, if you don't think Butch Jones is going to be emptying out the playbook and try to figure out every sort of, trick play and whatever to go maybe win this game, you're wrong, because this is a big game in Jonesboro, and they're going to be doing everything they can to keep it close.
Yeah, they don't get games like this often, and that's something you can't really quantify from our end, because we see 6-7 games a year with, or I guess it's probably closer to 4 to 5, with a top 25 team coming into town or a rival coming into town. Arkansas State just doesn't get that often, so the crowd, I'm sure, as long as they're not passed out from dehydration, they'll be pretty juiced up.
You think they tailgate pretty hard in Jonesboro? I'd bet so.
Isn't it a dry county or something like that? I thought I heard that from somebody.
I thought I heard that too, but come on, there's got to be there's got to be a way. They're not just milling around the parking lots waiting to go in the stadium.
Drinking Diet Pepsi.
Yeah, they got some good stuff going on, no doubt.
Yes, Jonesboro, Arkansas is located in Craighead County, which is a dry county, meaning the sale of alcoholic beverages is largely prohibited within the county, while bars and retail alcohol sales are generally outlawed. Exceptions exist for restaurants and businesses with permits to serve alcohol. So, I can't imagine it's completely dry. Definitely drier than Story County, but you can still find your way to get a hand on a beer.
You get next county over, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Stock up and head to the game, unless this is a rabbit hole, but it's starting to intrigue me a little bit, because what if they really don't have much of a tailgating scene? All the Cyclone fans, we didn't even talk about this. How many Cyclone fans do you think will make the 9-hour drive? It ain't an easy route, no matter what you choose, but I'll bet there's a lot. I'll bet there's a lot of Iowa State fans are going to make this drive.
See, I was going to guess probably not a ton. Just when you look at the upcoming schedule, when Cincinnati, that's an easy 8-hour drive. Boulder, or Denver's a direct flight. Dallas, direct flight. If I were a Cyclone fan, I would be saving my money for later road trips, but then again, this fan base has proven me wrong before and surprised me.
Yeah, especially if you went to Dublin earlier. I think Jonesboro is maybe a tiny bit of a letdown compared to if you made that Dublin trip. But, I know a couple folks going, and I wouldn't put it completely past Iowa State fans to show up and show out.
So it's not a very expensive trip for them, too, outside of gas. I mean, it's so we'll see what happens there. I'm looking up their tailgate stuff here. They do have an area that they call the premier tailgating area. So I can't imagine you could call anything a premier tailgating area unless you are able to enjoy a few libations. I don't see anything else, but that's, I guess, in the words of Forrest Gump, that's all I have to say about that.
Well, we'll move on. I don't think Arkansas State is going to become an Ivy League school anytime soon, so I'll go out on a limb and say that. But Iowa State has now a bit of a pipeline when it comes to Ivy League players, from Jalen Travis last year coming from Princeton, and now Tamatoa McDonough coming from Yale. And Matt Campbell was asked about what he likes about that Ivy League connection.
I like guys that are smarter than all of us, so that helps first and foremost. But I just think from my end, both of these young men have very similar traits. They're, number one, mature. They've challenged themselves and had great playing careers. Both of them played a ton of football. Yale has had a tremendous program as well and understands what it means to play championship level football. So I think Tama's got a little bit of that as well to his pedigree when the recruiting process came. And then, I just think from the collective character piece of it, the work ethic, I've said this about Tama, and really it was the same with Jalen. every single day that those guys were here, those guys, you can just visibly see them getting better. And Tama has been the same way, and the hard part is you got to wait till May, until they graduate. And that was kind of both of their situations. So you don't get them for spring ball. So you kind of feel like it's a slow boil as those guys slowly kind of get their footing. And then once they have some confidence, boy, they can really go. And I think Tama's in that boat. And, I thought was exceptional on Saturday. And I only think he'll get better. I think he's got all the physical traits and the physical tools to be really, really special for this football team. And obviously we're really grateful that we have him here.
I don't know about you guys.
Great work on that video, Jake. I didn't realize that McDonough had the dance moves on the sack celebrations until I just watched your footage there.
Yeah, it was impressive. I didn't get into an Ivy League school. I probably could have no, I'm kidding. I didn't even try. I knew better than that, but you can tell talking to McDonough just how intelligent of a guy he is. What have you guys noticed between Travis and McDonough about maybe what makes it work transferring to the Power 5 level?
Well, after being exposed to both of them from the jump, I mean, yeah, the intellectual element is pronounced. I think particularly with Travis, I think but both of them, and the fact that both of them get their Ivy League degrees and then boom, they come in going to get to play Power 4 football, and we saw how well that translated to success for Jalen Travis. Everything Iowa State laid out for him leads him to being drafted, sticking in the NFL with the Colts. McDonough looked early on, right, like he wasn't generating much, but I felt like there were times he looked like he was pretty close to getting off the edge and getting somebody. And obviously nobody really got off the edge and got anybody in the first two games. I think what very skewed also the South Dakota game, when you get up like they got up, or how much pressure are you really trying to apply a quarterback, drop 8 and not let him get anything remotely downfield to get back anywhere close to being in the game. So McDonough is the most interesting thing to me about him was he didn't want to put a number on the number of sacks he wants. He had, I think, 6.5 last year at Yale. And he also has a interesting playlist where he says it's a little bit of everything that he gets ready for the game. So this guy, again, they talk about being pros. This guy did it at Yale for a long time. As Coach Campbell said, played a lot of football. Travis played a lot of football. And they just go about their business in a way that is methodical. It's unwavering in how it's precise, meticulous. And I think we're going to see that continue to show up for McDonough because he's got that a little bit of quick twitch there. You see, which you obviously saw in the back-to-back sacks against Iowa. But, I mean, he, again, big citrus, Dom Orange is going to keep taking up 2 guys. We get any pressure otherwise. We see the Bacon and Lovitz of the world heading down there for a 4th down lineman. He's going to get a lot more opportunities. And I think that pedigree, I mean, the Yale-Harvard rivalry is no joke, right? I mean, it's one of the oldest in college football. He even referenced it. To me, that's like the Heacock game was like Yale-Harvard, and everyone's like, haha, FCS. But that's a huge deal, historic deal. And I think his perspective is unique, and I think it's going to translate to a lot of success on the field for his one season at Iowa State.
Yeah, Rob, I think McDonough wearing number 58 tells you everything you need to know about the kind of person he is, the kind of maturity, I think he would bring to wear that number in honor of former coach Curtis Bray. Yep. Especially because he hasn't been here for all that long. So for him to get handed that honor, to earn that honor is I think tells you what you need to know about what kind of people that you get from the Ivy League, but also the thing that sticks out to me about Jalen Travis and Tamatoa McDonough is how physically ready they are for the Big 12 level. And I think that comes down to when you spend 4 years at an Ivy League school and, stick it out through those entire years because you have to graduate, you come to a place like Iowa State physically developed. I mean, I remember the first time I went in and shook Jalen Travis's hand.
Oh, yeah.
That dude looks like an NFL left tackle. And sure enough, the Indianapolis Colts thought that as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then you add the added layer of how much they stress. Campbell mentioned this too. They even were able to transform themselves in a short amount of time after coming on campus too, after already acquiring, as you rightly said, Ben, that physical maturity in 4 years at an Ivy.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I think you guys pretty much nailed it. There is something that Campbell's found in the Ivy League pipeline, and it'll be interesting to see if he goes back to that well after this year. I think probably the only downside is, for the most part, these guys are just going to be 1-year players almost no matter what. I mean, they'd be foolish to not be more than 1-year players, because if you can get an Ivy League degree, you got to do it. But something tells me that Campbell will probably continue and go back to this well. TJ Altsberger might not. The Hans Brace stuff didn't work too great back in the early Steve Prohm days. I don't envision any more Yale, or he was Yale, I believe. Any more Ivy League players coming over
Princeton,
to the Big 12 for basketball. That's before your time, Ben. That's way before your time on the beat.
Hans Brace, what a blast from the past.
Princeton. Thank you, Aiden.
That's what I thought. But yeah, I mean, I think what is great about it is positions of need, right? You needed a bell cow on that offensive line last year, and Jalen Travis gave you one after he was banged up early on. McDonough, guy who's proven it, had almost 7 sacks last season. So again, developmental program, I would say. Campbell will tell you ad nauseum that's what they got to be. But when you can find, we need an extra edge rusher. We need an extra offensive lineman, whether he's going to be great, whether he's just going to be good, rotational. That's where I think schools like the Ivy can really, really, really give you something, because you can't play X number of years there. I mean, whatever your eligibility is, you're done when you graduate, is my understanding. So, I mean, guys are going to be looking, and they do get a number of good players in those leagues. It's particularly up front, it seems like.
And another reason for it to continue real quickly, guys, is I believe Taylor Mauser recruits a lot up there. And that's a guy who has proven, his connectedness with people. That's a player, or that's a coach that can recruit. And he actually was the first one to reach out to McDonough. Even though McDonough was a defensive guy, Mauser was up there talking to him. We heard the meatball story, with Jalen Travis last year, I think. Yeah. So as long as Taylor Mauser's, sniffing around, recruiting around that area, you'd expect Iowa State to find some success.
Yeah, that's a good nugget, Ben. Speaking of recruiting, I guess this kind of ties into recruiting a little bit. Last year, Iowa State had two true freshmen that burnt their red shirt. And that's Brett Eskelson and Marcus Neal. Both guys were made available yesterday. We talked to both of them, and both are having pretty similar breakout seasons. Neal probably more so than Eskelson, but Eskelson has pretty clearly been Iowa State's best wide receiver so far this season. I just thought it was interesting when our good friend Alec Bussey pointed out that to Campbell that they were the only two players, and maybe what they did to deserve that. And I think it's come to fruition this year. Yeah.
I talked to Marcus Neal about that. I asked him, what's the biggest difference, and he said that the game is slowed down. And I'm sure Eskelson would probably tell you that same thing too. Neal said that he just knows his role now. He's able to go out and play freely. And you see that so much with the way Neal flies around the field. I mean, he's hitting guys. He is a violent player. And I think it's that freedom that we saw last year, getting your experience there, that's allowed him to make that leap. And he's one of those guys where whenever you turn on the film, Marcus Neal really pops.
Yeah, that's what strikes me too, Ben. I mean, so physical and right place, right time kind of guy. I mean, he's like a linebacker to me. I mean, he just the way he hits, sure tackling. I mean, the technique is right. And I mean, talk about a guy, all you have to do is walk up to him and see him smile, and he loves to play football, because you just walk up, hey, Mark, big smile from him. I don't think his opponents are seeing that smile very much. They're seeing stars because of the way he hits. But he popped at times late last season, but he is really, really looking like an all Big 12 type player this season. And as you mentioned, Eskelson, I mean, he's their best, I think, right now, deep threat at the receiver position. I mean, we've seen it with a couple of the catches. Has he corralled everything? No. Has it all been great? I mean, we've seen Overby come close. He's had some nice catches and also some drops. But, I mean, that's a guy that I think people slept on a little bit, Eskilsson, because for whatever reason, he was a big track guy coming in too. And, so he had the speed, the measurables. He's got the body for it. And, very, very interesting point that, those are guys that were willing to burn red shirts. But as you said, we're seeing that reach fruition because of A, Eskilsson's big playability, and B, Marcus Neal's every down toughness.
I asked Eskilsson yesterday, like, where he gets his swagger from, because I feel like there's nobody on the team that is out there dancing more or doing celebrations more than Eskilsson. And he just laughed and he's like, oh, it's a child's game. I got to remember that and have fun. And then he went into how that helps when he did have that drop on the first drive against Iowa that would have put him inside the 10-yard line. What does he do the next possession? He comes down and has, I think, the longest play of the game by either team. So there is a bit of that. I just notice a swagger with him whenever he's on the field, and that's something we probably didn't see last year because he didn't have a ton of opportunities to show it. And maybe it's the number change from 81 to 9. There's no doubt that that's just a massive upgrade when you're looking at a guy. You can't explain it, but you can just feel a different type of swagger from him than I think really any of the other receivers right now.
He got it from Conor McGregor, I think.
Oh yeah, which that was a great celebration. I know
he got the retweet too and everything.
It might not have been popular with the locals in Ireland. I really found in my time there that they do not like Conor McGregor, which there's plenty of reasons to not like him, but I wouldn't have expected his home country to hate him as much as they do.
Yeah, I found that too. And now he's running for president, I think. I wouldn't anticipate that going too well based on the conversations I had.
Either way, though, Eskilsson, if there's an award for best dancer on the team, or I mean, who knows? It could be Jim Boniface, but the center's not getting many chances out there to dance, and we've seen it pretty much. We've seen it pretty much every single time from Eskilsson when he has a first down, a touchdown. He's putting on a show for the cameras.
Yeah, and what those guys combine again is that joy of being on the field. You reference it, Jake, with him saying, "Hey, it's a child's game. I got to have fun with it." It's another thing that Campbell stresses. Guys that love football and guys who love playing football. Those are two different things, and these guys clearly embody both of those qualities. And you're right, just fun to watch them play and see where it goes. And I had referenced it in the past, but the fact that Eskilsson takes Jaden Higgins' old number when Chase Sowell said, "Hey, I want to make my own legacy," that tells you a little bit something about his gumption too, right? And it takes nothing away from Sowell. Sowell's the new guy. He's probably like, do I want to put on the guy who's just become a legend? And we saw shout out to Sowell too for a couple big catches and key moments in the Iowa game. He'll continue to pop up, but I think that says something about Eskilsson's swagger as well.
Yeah, both guys are, Neal and Eskilsson are both key players. I actually put out a Twitter poll the other night. I got to go check the results, but I asked Iowa State fans who they thought was Iowa State's defensive MVP so far this season. It was Dom Orange, Marcus Neal, Jeremiah Cooper, and Caleb Bacon were the four that I landed on. I'm pulling up the poll right now, and I believe Orange won, but it wasn't as big of a gap as I thought. Yeah, Orange got 51% of the vote, Neal 34%, and then Cooper and Bacon were both down there at 6%. And I had no agenda behind it. I was genuinely just curious because I think you could really make an argument for 5 players if you throw in Jontez Williams as well.
Yeah, it's hard to vote against Dom, though. Hard to vote against Dom because of his...
Dom would be my vote as well. Like, you just can't... You can't put a stat on what he does out there when you're taking up 2 or 3 guys.
All you have to do is notice when he can't be out there. And what that means for that defense. And no offense to the other guys. There's a reason people are talking about him being a potential first-round draft pick. And he's just got that it factor, the freak factor, I guess, via the thing that Chris Feldman puts out every year. But it's his It's his MVP, I think, unless he remits it and let somebody else take it, because he's just so important to that defense for sure.
Awesome, guys. Well, that's another week of the Beat Reporters. I had some fun. We'll have to get creative during the bye week. We'll find stuff to talk about, though. We always do. Yeah. But we will be back next week following Iowa State's game against Arkansas State, and we hope that you are back with us as well. Thank you for tuning in to the Beat Reporters here in the Northwest Bank Studios, presented by Kelderman Manufacturing.